Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Starchild podcast. I am Starchild, your host. Today, I am reviewing the film called Parasite by Bong Joon Ho, who is a South Korean film director. And this film won the Cannes Palme d'Or in 2019. Rightly so, I finally got around to watching it. Its runtime is 132 minutes. And just a warning, there will be uh, a few spoilers. I'm trying not to give too much away in these reviews, and especially with this film, I think it's best to go into it cold. Um, this movie is filled with a whole bunch of symbology, metaphors, motifs, subtle nuances, and references about social commentary and the dividing, the ever growing wealth gap, especially in South Korea and the United States. Um, it debuted in Cannes in 2019, um, and it is a comedy slash thriller that is about the impoverished family called the Kims, a family of four who con their way into the super rich family called the Parks, who live up in kind of the Hollywood Hills, you could say, of South Korea. Meanwhile, the Kim family lives in kind of a semi-basement apartment, which is very small. The cinematographer is Kyung Pyo Hong, and the budget of the movie was $11 million, and it is doing extremely well in the international box office. I think it's grossed like 140 something $1 million, and it's up for a bunch of Oscars and awards. So this movie is a comedy suspense thriller that displays kind of the unequal effects that climate change has on different social classes. The Kim family is an impoverished, penniless South Korean family. Meanwhile, the Park family is this super rich family that doesn't really contribute a whole lot to society and are kind of portrayed as these kind of mass consumers. Um, Meanwhile, the Kim family lives fairly modestly in their semi basement apartment. Their a semi basement is half in the ground and half above the ground. Um, so they see kind of all the things that happen on the streets and the alleys in this city in South Korea. Um, so the Park family are kind of seen as being mass consumers and wasteful, especially living in their insanely huge mansion. Um, and a big turning point in the film happens during a really bad rainstorm. And the Park family, the rich family, it doesn't really affect them a whole lot. They're just like, they cancel their camping trip because of the rainstorm. But meanwhile, because they live in the hills in South Korea, the rainstorm doesn't really affect them as much. Um, but the Kim family, however, they live down below, especially since their apartment is a semi basement, being half in the ground. Their apartment eventually gets flooded, um, which happens here. Um, and because of that, they essentially have to start over. They lose all their belongings, um, and since they con their way into the Park family, they end up working for the Park family, and they have to go work for them the next day as if nothing has ever happened to them, because the Park family is so out of touch with the working class, that they don't understand how the rainstorm affects them. Um, uh, the film also features such motifs as reducing complex cultures into commodities and products, such as Native Americans being reduced to bows and arrows and headdresses in the film being used by the Park family as just kind of a way to make their son happy for his birthday party. Um, Also, since the beginning of the film, the Kim family receives a scholar stone, what is called a scholar stone, which is a gift that is given to families as a symbol of attracting wealth. And once the stone enters their lives, the Kim family's life actually does change for the better. They do start becoming more successful as the movie goes on. As they enter the Park family's life, they become more wealthy, and their social status changes as well, and they become kind of out of touch as well. And this causes a divide not only between the lower working class and the upper class, but among the working class as well. The movie shows how the working class not only fights the rich, but they oftentimes fight themselves, which I thought was really interesting. And ultimately, once the stone leaves the Kim family, the stone then becomes a weapon and is used against the Kim family. The stone originally was given to the son of the Kim family on the left, who becomes the tutor for the Park family's daughter, the English tutor. And that's how really the movie begins, is his friend gives the Kim family's son this scholar stone, and then offers him a job to work for the Park family as the daughter's English tutor. And because of the Parks family's status and their privilege, this allows them to kind of take advantage of and abuse the working class, which ultimately leads to kind of the violent climax that we see at the end. I went into this movie completely cold. I had no idea what this movie was about. I honestly thought it was about parasites. I thought it was about some epidemic or something, because Bong Joon Ho is known for his monster movies. But this definitely is not a monster movie. Rather, it explores kind of the monster within us all. He's not saying it's not necessarily a personality contest between the working class and the super rich, but rather it kind of explores the ignorant monster within us all, that makes us out of touch with one another, which I thought was an interesting kind of motif to explore. Also, at the very end, it features a Korean song with lyrics that talk about the wealth gap and how wealth is oftentimes cyclical, poverty is cyclical, and being extremely rich is becoming more cyclical. Wealth is oftentimes inherited nowadays, and the super rich remain super rich, and the poor remain poor. And the song at the very end describes how the mansion in the movie, in order for an average working class citizen to afford a house such as that, it would take them over 500 years to save up to that point, which the son ultimately does do in the film, and rescues his dad from the basement by buying the mansion. But in order to afford a house such as that, it would take an average person over 500 years to save up to that point, which is pretty staggering, because, in my opinion, we're in the age of the shareholder. People that own shares are doing extremely well. Meanwhile, the average working person is pretty stagnant, has been stagnant for 30 years now, wages haven't really gone up, and shareholders have done extremely well over the past 30 years. And that doesn't really get talked about a whole lot as to why the wealth gap has grown, because union membership has declined over the decades, and shareholders' wealth have increased exponentially. And so I hope that changes. I hope union membership increases and wages start to increase. I think that would happen if people voted more. So this kind of myth of social mobility is expressed throughout the film, how difficult it is to move up the social ladder. It is extremely difficult. In fact, it shows that it would take 500 years of savings for the average person to afford a house like that. And the only way anyone can afford that kind of lifestyle is if they are a shareholder or, some CEO of a big corporation. So it doesn't make the super rich the bad guy. It makes the monster within us all that comes out through greed, through ignorance, and through these kind of instinctual human emotions that we fall back on to default. Like in the climax of the movie, the violent climax of the movie, everyone flees for their lives rather than being concerned about who is getting hurt. And that just kind of shows the cowardice of greed in the end. So I give this movie a 9.2. I absolutely loved the first 2/3 of the film. I thought it flowed very well. However, the last third of the film I felt was just a little bit rushed because of all the twists and turns that it takes. I thought it was still extremely good, but there are a lot of twists and turns, way more than I expected. But in the end, just a really fun comedic thriller that I thoroughly enjoy, and I'm glad that it's doing really well. And I'm excited for his next movie. This debuted about a year ago, so he's probably working on his next film. And I will end with the sad news that we lost a Monty Python member, Terry Jones. He's one of the lesser-known members of Monty Python because he worked more kind of behind the scenes. He did co-direct Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and he directed Life of Brian as well, which are both just amazing comedic masterpieces. Here he is here accepting a BAFTA Life Achievement Award, and I'm going to play for you Graham Chapman's eulogy by John Cleese, which I think is absolutely the best eulogy I've ever heard being given. It's roughly 2 minutes long. And here we go.
The rest of life he rests is no more. He had ceased to be. The rest of life he rests in peace. He's kicked the bucket, hopped the twig, bit the dust, snuffed it.
When I finally pass, I hope my eulogy is half as good as this.
The great head of light entertainment in the sky. And I guess that we're all thinking how sad it is that a man of such talent, of such capability for kindness, of such unusual intelligence, should now so suddenly be spirited away at the age of only 48, before he'd achieved many of the things of which he was capable, and before he'd had enough fun. Well, I feel that I should say nonsense. Good riddance to him, the freeloading bastard. I hope he's fine. And the reason I feel I should say this is he would never forgive me if I didn't, if I threw away this glorious opportunity to shock you all on his behalf. Anything for him but mindless good taste. I could hear him whispering in my ear last night as I was writing this. All right, please, he was saying, you're very proud of being the very first person ever to say shit on British television. If this service is really for me, just for starters, I want you to become the first person ever at a British memorial service to say fuck.
Rest in peace, Terry Jones. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Starchild. This is the Starchild podcast. Tune in next week. I'm so glad that I watched this film because this is going to be a great jumping off point for my next podcast, which will further discuss the wealth gap and the division of social classes and cyclical poverty, cyclical wealth, and the age of the shareholder, essentially. So thank you so much for watching, and tune in next week. I'll post all my information in the description below, all of the links to social media, links to my website, starchildgallery.com, links to my email. You can email me at starchild.seattle@gmail.com. All of that good stuff will be in the link below, in the description below, as well as links to all of my custom designs, which are pretty cool. So that really helps support this podcast. And thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you again next week.